I have a colleague, Rabbi Zoe Klein-Miles, who posted an amazing story a few months ago on Facebook, and it inspired me to write this sermon. Her story is of repentance, or teshuvah in Hebrew, and it captures the very essence of what the high holidays are all about. When I read her family's experience of the power of repentance and the healing that comes from making right past wrongs, it moved me to tell their story tonight. It is the age-old hope that we too will be inspired to heal through the process of teshuvah. Rabbi Miles, Zoe, told the story of how in 1970 her father, James Grashow, was commissioned to illustrate an advertisement in the New York Times for Barton's Chocolates. He made a beautiful woodcut called Abraham, the First Jew, along with 100 prints signed and numbered. A Swedish art dealer saw the newspaper ad, loved it, and offered to sell the prints in Europe and send her father the money. Her parents agreed to this arrangement and saved one print for themselves, giving the art dealer the rest of the copies. Her parents were naive and trusting, and guess what? They never heard from him again. And although they always wondered what happened to that art dealer, Zoe's father didn't remain resentful about it. He went on to have a successful career as an artist. When Zoe got ordained as a rabbi, they gave her the one framed copy that they'd kept of Abraham for her to hang in her office. And every time they saw the print, they wondered what happened to that art dealer, because there was a feeling of unfinished business. Don't we all have something that feels unfinished in our lives? Isn't there a relationship or a situation which just doesn't feel quite complete? This is our job during the days of awe. We are to examine our deeds and fix what is broken and doesn't feel quite right, to repair where we've gone wrong in our lives, especially in the case of those whom we've harmed or those who've harmed us. It is said that Yom Kippur does not atone for sins between an individual and God until the individual has gone before the person he has harmed and asked for forgiveness. This is similar to what Rabbi Akiva said in Mishnah in Yoma. Even as a ritual bath purifies the unclean, so does the Holy One purify Israel. A person cannot purify themselves only partially, like by submerging only one limb. The person has to be totally submerged by the waters of the mikvah. This is the stated prescription set down by the ancient sages of Babylonia who compiled the Babylonian Talmud. They understood that asking for forgiveness is complex and frightening, but it is so cathartic that they couldn't overlook its inherent benefits. Like the example of the mikvah, we have to fully commit to the process of teshuvah. There's a great book called The Four Things That Matter Most that helps us with the process of teshuvah by beseeching us to have difficult conversations. In his book, Dr. Ira Byock suggests saying these four things as soon as possible. But he does acknowledge the difficulty of sharing them with whom we have complicated emotions. But if the words are said and the risk is taken, the rewards can be enormous. The four things are: please forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you. He invites the reader to engage with the idea that the process of repentance and forgiveness can be extremely cathartic and life-giving. The book gives instances where people who are in various phases of decline have taken the risk to apologize, to open themselves up to giving and receiving love, and to show their gratitude to others. His book is fraught with instances of how people overcame their past abuse, their past hurt, their pain, and their fear of asking for forgiveness and love and finally giving it. From this process, lives heal, people heal, and it enriches the rest of the time we have in this world, even if that time is short. There is nothing that is too big for God to make right. There is no sin that cannot be forgiven by God, but what about by us? Now, please understand, forgiving someone for harming you does not mean you choose to condone the behavior. It just means you're ready to release the anger and resentment that you've been holding about that situation. It doesn't mean you give the person the opportunity to hurt you again, but it means that you're willing to let the past go and move forward for your own spiritual growth. There's a congregant who told me the story of how years ago he was ripped off by his business partner. His partner, an alcoholic, embezzled so much money that they had to shut down part of the business. My congregant, after some time and processing, forgave his partner. He didn't hold on to the anger. And even though the partner died a few years later from alcoholism, my congregant was able to attend the funeral to honor the deceased's family. He resisted the temptation to harbor ill will toward the man, even though he would have been justified to do so. Instead, he released the anger, moved on, and lives a free person. He didn't allow his life nor his business to be defined by that situation. In a few minutes, we will hear Kol Nidre chanted. And after we chant this ancient melody, we say the words that God says, Salachti kidvarecha, and God has granted us forgiveness as we have asked. So we know God is forgiving. But what about we as people to other people? Have we done the work to ask others whom we've harmed to forgive us? And are we also forgiving those who have harmed us? Are you open to emulating God by forgiving others for their transgressions? Our liturgy shows us how we are to act when this happens, that we too can act in a forgiving spirit to others as does God to us, even in the instance where someone never offers us an apology nor acknowledges their wrongs. It's not always easy, but perhaps it's even more valuable when you have the choice to be resentful and right, and instead you can forgive and choose to be free. Going back to Zoe's story, a year ago, her father got a random email that said, "Our parents passed away a couple of years ago. And when we were cleaning out their estate, we found a series of almost 100 Abraham prints. Do you know the story of these prints? My siblings and I live all over Europe and California, and we look forward to hearing from you." Her parents responded to them that they had wondered what had happened to the prints that had disappeared 47 years prior. It turns out that their father, the art dealer, had become a minister after being in the art business. But although they loved the print of Abraham, which had hung in their childhood home, they never knew its origins. So the three children traveled to Connecticut to meet Zoe's parents. They carried a big weathered suitcase, which contained the original cardboard box of prints, and there were 87 prints left. And when Zoe's parents saw the prints, they cried. They described the moment as a moment of true redemptive tshuva, a literal return. And although they'll never know why the art dealer did what he did, his children made it right. After a shared afternoon with Zoe's parents and the art dealer's children, they parted ways. And the next morning, her parents heard from them, who said, "Yesterday will stay in our memories for all of our lives, and we are so happy that we were able to correct one of our father's mistakes." Making amends, receiving amends, changing our ways is very difficult, but simultaneously it is so life-giving. Maimonides said back in the 10th century, "I committed iniquity before you by doing the following. Behold, I regret and am embarrassed for my deeds. I promise never to repeat this act again. Doing teshuvah restores our soul to original factory defaults, and it also heals others. Zoe's parents now had closure, and they had the returned prince, and they wanted them to have a good home, so they offered them to be sent to synagogues across the country. They wanted Abraham to be remembered for his deeds, that he was the first monotheist who was brave enough to risk everything to follow God and to forge his way to a new land and new beliefs. And they wanted his likeness to be an inspiration for those who see this print to seek forgiveness, to forgive others, to love and to offer gratitude to those whom they have not done so before. To forgive is as brave as leaving everything you know behind and going off to a new land, as Abraham did. I have a copy of this print, which will be displayed here at the congregation as a reminder of the power of teshuvah, of return and repentance. And it is my hope that when we see it, we will be inspired to act in accordance of completing the work which feels spiritually unfinished in our lives, in our relationships, and in our souls. On this holiest of holy nights, may we be blessed with the clarity to know the work of our soul that will lead to greater fulfillment and wholeness. May we be given the strength to face the past and to heal any transgressions we may have caused, and may we be given the willingness to forgive the harm that has been done to us. May this be God's will. Good Yontif.